Hello, everybody. This is John Blank. It is Monday, February 24th, 2025, and I am about to embark on the two paths of development that I have found in the world's top telco and water stocks. Um, Fascinating introduction into how regulated industries that are kind of defensive and under the radar are actually quite active in their development. And particularly now with the computer and information technology transformation of their businesses, there's lots to learn here. So, like always, we go through the three ways to identify top stocks. That it'll be by their market capitalization. The biggest stocks will be the ones that will be always in our top bucket. The maximum number of covering analysts of those stocks, that will also be a very strong signal that it's a top stock in that area. And of course, the Zacks Rank core element, which is the percentage annual change over the last month in its earning estimates, so that there's some action in the covering analyst space towards upgrading those stocks. So once again, we will carry on and hopefully contact us at the end of this presentation for the slides that go with this talk. Those are the critical sets of information that is going to make your investing day a whole lot better. So once again, this is always my views. I do have a PhD, and they are not necessarily the views of Zacks Investment Research. All right, so as always, we go through a review table of the top industries and their stocks. So this time around, industry codes 55 and 56. The 55 is the telephone business. This is state regulated, and a lot of times nations have taken control of their telephone systems, and you will find that to be the case. This is very global business. Water supply, no different, although there is also very much a regional business within the United States. So that's what you're going to see here. Over here, I've got my top stocks by market capitalization. Here, the Zacks rankiness, and of course, over here, the covering analysts. So first off, I want to point out in the telecom space, you can see Swiss Telecom, Deutsche Telekom, Nippon Telecom, that's Japan, Singapore Telecom, Chunghwa, which is Hong Kong, Telefónica, which is Brazil. This is what I'm talking about. Bell Canada is BCE. So all of these are basically national telecoms. And the biggest one, of course, in terms of market capitalization, is Swisscom. We'll get into why some of these are bigger than others, and you might be surprised about how that plays out. But I just want to basically point out we have, at least 20 billion in market cap here. And down in the water companies, the biggest one, American Water Works, ticker AWK, is at 25 billion. We've got Veolia Environment, which is a French company. And then the rest of them are much smaller, like American States Water, just 2-3 billion, California Water Services, 2.7 billion. So this is going to be a smaller set of businesses. This is going to be a larger set of businesses, but contained within a country. So over here, you can see in terms of covering analysts, is Bell Canada is really up at the top, and Brazilian company Telefónica Brazil is very close, as well as its competitor Telefónica, just has some Spanish interest as well. Down here, we get American Water Works again, Essential Utilities, California Water Services again, and American States Water again. So, of course, there's always going to be overlap between this group, and indeed there is. Here is what's been upgraded. And I just want to point out that we're getting a lot of interest in Deutsche Telekom, and that is T-Mobile. T-Mobile is in there, so that is why that is active. Ticker VIV is Telefónica Brazil, ticker VIV, keep that in mind. Bell Canada's ticker BCE. NTTYY will be your Japanese supplier. So down here, again, AWK will be American Water Works, Veolia will be VEOEY. And we'll get into the other ones. AWR, I do spend time on American States Water. So we'll also talk about Middlesex Water, which is a regional Northeast water supplier, ticker MSEX. So once again, this is the page you can come back to clarify tickers, market sizes, and names of those companies. All right, so back to the basics on these differences between telephones and telecom businesses. So basically, remember the telephone business is physical copper wire centered on voice communications, and it's regulated by the FCC. That's been the traditional model. Telecom is much broader. That's going to be voice, data, and video. Obviously, like this Zoom call, this is now telecom, not teleco or telephone, because we're, voice is here, but it comes with video and data. So this is also backed with fiber optic, satellite, cellular, and wireless. So this is the infotech part of telecom. From this to this, you can see that we really have a totally different business with a lot more capabilities. Still regulated by the FCC. The scope is much broader, right? A much greater array of services, Wi-Fi, broadband, cell phones, voice over internet protocol, television, all of these things are in telecom. So over here, again, this is just going to lay that out a little more for you into the various groups and how it works. Just, give yourself some time here to understand just how much of this business has changed with the arrival of so much info tech. This was always with us for over a century, but this is what's really changed. And that's really why I've called this the two paths of development. So you're going to see this path of development from telephone to telecom is the one path that we're going to talk about. The other one, of course, is the water business itself. Water supply is changing, and we're taking this information out of the Wall Street Journal and Business Insider, but it is amazing how much is going on. We've got wastewater utilities with financial challenges, with financial performance issues. They got increased operating costs, tighter margins. But what they're trying to do about it is remote and digital water management. So digital tools for remote management, just like remote working, we have remote management, water supply, quicker responses to incidents. If you've got a water leak or something like that, and improve collaboration. Autonomous water treatment plants, autonomous run drinking plants. And this eliminates process fragmentation, enhance efficiency. So you actually have, treatment plants for water that are now autonomous. Fascinating. Preemptive decision-making in wastewater treatment, implementing platforms of real-time monitoring, automated decision-making, proactive incident management. That's getting into a kind of an AI type spin. Advanced leak detection, of course, data analysis, sensors, communications tech, all of this improving leak detection and reducing water losses. Of course, we got the EPA in here regulating this, like the FCC does the other business. And we've got water use and conservation. We've got some sustainability issues. But I just want to point out again, technology is leading another path of development for the water utility space. So like I said, this is the two paths of development. And we're now going to get into the top stocks that are existing in this developing context. All right, top stocks by market capitalization. Here we go. Number one, I want to talk about Bell Canada. That's ticker BCE. That's the return on capital that's got the highest at 18 PE. Look at this. It's very stable. That shows you it's regulated because they're just letting the business earn that much money. Well, they can earn more than these other regulated entities. So that's what's interesting. And it is local and long distance, and it is 70% of the Canadian population in Quebec and Ontario. So you can look through all this, and this is what you get a picture of. This is BCE. Consolidated Water Company down here, CWC. Oh, I've got it at a 13 ROE, and this is having a large growing thing because it's focusing on tourist properties and growing population areas, CWCO. And you can see this is actually quite different. And you're getting a lot of pop out of the ROE in the water supply base with Consolidated Water Company. A fascinating situation. Sabesco, SABSO, that's here, ticker's SBS. And that's for the water supply of Sao Paulo. And you can see here, again, they must have gotten an upgrade to a much higher level of water profitability, probably through the regulatory space. You can see this jump around a lot because of the regulations change. But, things that are much more stable like this are going to offer you probably a strong dividend if you look into that stock. Okay, so we've gone from that business to the forward PE ratios. I want to talk about TELUS Corporation. It's another telecom provider here, Canadian. This one is out in British Columbia doing 4G, wireless, wireline, and internet. And it spent $240 billion to keep its infrastructure together. That's development, folks. That's $240 billion. and they're going to spend another 40 billion to do 5G. So here is, they're putting investment in, the stock is getting a higher multiple as a result of it. Ticker TU. AWR is another one that's a top stock in the water space. And what do we got here? We got a Golden States Water and American States Utility. So this is basically California. They own pipelines, services, meters, hydrants, land, walls, pumping, reservoirs, all this stuff. You probably heard a little bit about it recently with the fires, but this is obviously spiked up a great deal during COVID, and then it's come back down a lot. And now we're in a place where it might actually be a nice entry point for you. Consider American States Water, ticker AWR. Again, that was one of our top market cap picks as well. So I singled it out, and you can certainly look into it further. All right, total debt charts. Top level of debt, Nippon Telegraph and Telephone. That's Japan, right? So they get the most debt because they're the largest supplier. That's 110 million people, to no surprise. And Veolia is French, ticker VEOEY. Again, a very large company, global and integrated solution, public and private. That's what I'm talking about. These are the big companies that you need to know about. All right, so we will skip reinvest. Oh, we'll get to the reinvestment rate. I want to talk about Deutsche Telekom here, largest telco company in perhaps in Europe, one of the largest, and a communication or worldwide through T-Mobile. You may not know that DTEGY is T-Mobile, but it is, and its reinvestment rate is high, which suggests it's got some growth opportunities. Middlesex Water jumps out, which is down in New Jersey. Again, it's a very old company, 120 years old, but they're doing well in terms of reinvestment, which suggests the business is stronger than you might think otherwise. This is what I'm going to skip, depreciation and amortization. We will go on to the top stocks by max number of analysts and get into this story. Of course, this is their price, EPS and EPS surprise. Again, you can see for some things like Bell Canada, you're seeing a huge plunge up there in Bell Canada. That doesn't look good. TELUS doesn't look good either. Telefónica Brazil looks like there's a play here, and this is the one I pulled out that actually is of most interest to me in the telco space, Telecom Italia, TIIAY. You can see here it has sold off already, but the actual earnings estimates have held up much better. So this one is of the most interest in the telecom space. Secondarily, I would put in the Brazil. These two, Canada, real issues there in terms of my expected development path of those companies is being eaten alive by competition. Down here, essential water utilities, ticker WTRG, has a nice pattern of strong estimate revisions and low prices. This looks very attractive, and it's acquired People's Gas. This is gas and water, regulated water and regulated gas. So this is basically essential utilities, including that natural gas business that's taken off for them. So this is another thing to talk about. These businesses sometimes are more than just water, and this is one. Ticker WTRG. There you have a nice looking chart pattern. AWK, no different. Look at that. Super nice chart pattern for that 24 billion, 5 billion market cap company. Both of them really attractive. So again, I like the water businesses across the board here versus the telco business, which the only one I can find is maybe this one and not too much. But the water businesses, because they have the natural gas businesses and because there is much stronger patterns to growth in the use of water, are much more attractive for investors. All right, earnings forward 12 months. Let's get into Swisscom. That's going to be our top performer up here. That is, of course, Swiss, and it has held up pretty well. I'm sure the Swiss like their own earnings from their own regulated utility for phone system. But look at this, AWR and AWS, these AWK and AWR, I'm sorry, look at the growth. This is so much different than up here, right? Look at this. Just look broadly versus this. These are much stronger patterns of earnings. And American States Water, again, we've talked about it, but look at this. That is an investable stock. And so this is really kind of interesting. Like I said, it's two paths of development. This one's inundated with technology and being pushed around a lot, held together by its state regulation, and this is actually growing. Its business is quite easily and quite strongly. Keep that in mind. All right, net margins. Chunghwa Telecom, largest telecom provider in Taiwan, has the largest margin. I expect that has to do with the regulation, but you can see these things are relatively stable margins because that's what the regulation does. They give you a cost plus margin. Down here, you've got a different story, like, for example, York Water Company, regulated by Pennsylvania Public Utilities. They do need to obtain approval, but they are getting slightly more higher margins over time, and they're giving that to probably some scale that they're driving on. Again, this business, 25% margins versus this one, 15%, 16% margins, quite dramatically lower up in the telco space. Total debt to capital, I want to point out TLTZY, Tele2 AB. This is the Swedish player, and they come to the top of the marks. You've probably never heard of that unless you're Swedish. Tele2 AB. It's based in Stockholm. Down here, we've got SJW, which is San Jose Water, and you can see it has also been building up its business as that is the California utility. So again, we're learning, not to no surprise, you've got to have a growing population and growing interest in water to grow the business. And that will be in areas like California. CapEx and depreciation, I just want to point out this one that's growing its CapEx more than its depreciation is this telephone and data systems, TDS, based in Chicago. It is US Cellular, right? So that is they're ramping up a national cellular network. Again, that's to my point on development. This is groups that if they own 80% of US Cellular, they can leave the Midwest behind and they can do national like T-Mobile, and they are driving up their CapEx to do that. That's where you want to look into. That's what gets interesting to me. All right, let's finish up with the top stocks by the Zacks rankiness. And the first one I'm going to pull up, Telefónica Brazil. Again, stable revenue growth and showing us a nice pattern. And again, we're down here, we got CWT. Again, AWK and WTRG and CWG. These are all showing much stronger growth patterns than up here. Again, two paths of development. This one nowhere near as attractive as this one. And the ticker that sticks out this time around, ticker CWT, incorporated in 1999, again, quite recently, in a quite different pattern. Cash flow yield, Shenandoah, ticker SHEN, that's Virginia and areas in the Carolinas. And again, you're seeing strong cash flow yield as they grow that business. But who's better? Look at this. Again, strong acceleration of cash flow yield for Artesian Resources, ARTNA, and they're right along with all these other groups in concert coming out of COVID in a nice pattern. Very obvious, right? You can look at this one versus that one, and it's very obvious that this is a lot more attractive. Price to free cash flow, let me just point out here, SPKKY is the New Zealand provider with the one that jumps out. But again, this is very noisy. I would just look across these and only look at the top ones for any kind of pick. Enterprise value to sales. Up here, I've got Telenor ASA. This is the Norwegian company. We talked to the Swedish one, the New Zealand one. Now, all of a sudden, we get the Norwegian one. Up here, Telenor Group. 4 segments, of course, TV, fixed line, mobile, and broadcast. So there you've got the story of the telephone to telecom businesses. But again, kind of, not as interesting to me as these water supply businesses that are much more attractive. Price to sales. Now this gets into the telephone businesses, which are blue, and the water supply businesses, which are green. And you're going to see, like I said, price to sales, much more improvement out of the COVID period for water than telecos, and the same is true for earnings. Look at this huge ramp in earnings here. That'll probably cool off, but at the end of the day, there's no activity for the last 10 years in the telco space. There's a lot of activity in the water space. And this is playing out in terms of them building those businesses here, not building them at all down here. One last chart for you. Again, I'm proving it all over again. Earnings appearance much stronger in water. Enterprise value much higher in water. And return on capital much higher on water. 2 paths of development, 2 stories. And of course, I'm telling you the water businesses are a lot healthier than the telco businesses. Probably doesn't surprise you because we know they're the telco business under a lot of pressure from a lot of places because of internet, Wi-Fi, 5G services can be provided by a lot of different groups. And we talked about T-Mobile and US Cellular, within that, and you can see for yourself things are really changing in that business. So I think this is probably a lot more interesting than you thought you were going to get out of this talk. You learn about state-owned projects, regulation, and how some businesses grow because the core markets beneath that regulation are stronger, and that is certainly the water business. So go ahead and give us a call at 866-794-6065, or send us an email at strategycall@zackspro.com, or find us on the web at www.zackspro.com. All that will get you to these slides and get you this information and help you pick stocks. So once again, 866-794-6065, strategycall@zackspro.com. Thank you so much.